Hey everybody, this is the wall. This is Randy Surles. I'm a editor, ghostwriter, and a writer. And I put this Q&A together so that I could help everyone, understand the publishing world better, write better books, and get their books into tip-top shape before they get published. So today, Dan can't join me right now, but and we're gonna probably have a limited exposure here in December. A couple for the holidays. We'll probably tone it down. We might have one more, but today I want to talk about kind of story methodologies for fiction. We're not going to talk about nonfiction today. So the only thing I can tell you about it, if you've never if you've never written a book before, is that there are systems in place to help to make it easier for you to write books. Story Grid's one. Save the Cat Writes a Novel is another. The Hero's Journey is kind of an overarching one that a lot of people use, and the a lot of people don't want to use these. They feel like they're formulaic, but they're not really formulaic in the sense that they are kind of how humans are in tune with story. Uh, when you read a romance story, there are certain scenes, and Dan and I have talked about this before, that most readers who like romance stories expect to see. Same thing with action, same thing with crime, same thing with horror. So if you do not meet these expectations, then most likely your readers will become dissatisfied, not be very happy with your book. And they're not crazy. I mean, for instance, for romance, they expect the lovers to meet pretty early in the book because they want to see the evolution of their relationship. And uh, if you are introducing the lovers like 75% through the book, they didn't get what they wanted. You sold them on a love story and they didn't get the love story they wanted. So that's something you need to think about. Same thing with action, let's talk about crime. Usually, the crime in the story happens at the very beginning of the book, sometimes in the first chapter, or at least in the first couple chapters, if not. And whether it's a robbery or it's a murder, whatever it is, there's a detective that gets involved, and the crime happens in the first chapter or two, and then the detective tries to get clues and discover it and follows red herrings and finally corners the criminal. And sometimes the criminal gets away and sometimes he doesn't. So if those elements aren't there, if you've promised a crime story and you haven't introduced a crime until much later in the book, then you're not giving the readers what they want. They want to see a detective or someone, hunting the criminal down and getting clues and trying to find out where they are. Same thing, and like with an action thriller as well. Obviously, action thriller, they want something. The hero has to accomplish a goal that is going to be an adventure, and there's going to be a confrontation at the end with the villain of the book, and the villain is going to actually do something at the beginning of the book that's going to cause this whole domino effect that the hero is going to have to figure out and discover who the villain is and what the villain wants, and then finally hunt the villain down. This is Jack Reacher or James Bond, Indiana Jones, Star Wars. All of these books kind of start out with the villain doing something villainous. Usually, people are hurt or dying in the beginning, and the hero gets involved somehow, whether it's a personal stake or it's an act of God that they happen to be at the right place at the right time, or it's their job. Ideally, they're not a detective, but they're maybe a guard or something like that, or whatever your story is, but they get involved and they get involved in hunting the villain down, and then there's a confrontation. And in almost all these stories, there's an all's lost moment. And so this is kind of the core foundation of most stories. Is this and these three? Well, the three ones I talked about, but there's a lot more. Save the Cat Writes a Novel, the Story Grid, the Snowflake Method, Fictionary, and the Hero's Journey, which is one of the older ones. All of these kind of reflect these things that should be in your story to make the reader satisfied and happy with the story. Now, that doesn't mean that you're cookie cutting these stories, that they're all exactly alike. It means that you come up with innovative ways to meet these expectations. And we've talked about this before, where they're surprising, but inevitable. The way the lovers meet, the way the lovers break up, the way the lovers get back together, the way the villain attacks, the way the confrontation at the end happens, the way that the crime is set up in the beginning, and how does the detective bring them to justice at the end, and the different clues that are discovered. All those, you can have innovative ways of just of showing this, but ideally you are you're meeting the expectations of the reader. Like, I know there's something in here that, I love seeing the red herrings. I love the detective finding the clues and making it all work out. That's why there's so many crime shows, between Columbo and Murder She Wrote, NCIS, all these different ways of finding the clues and getting to the solution of the crime and bringing the person to justice, and all the different versions of what a crime is. Those are the innovative ways that they can bring another detective story to light. So that's just something to think about. There's a lot of great books out there, and a lot of these books are like, the Story Grid is actually a book about how to edit your own work using these scenes that are expected by the reader. And so that's in a way that's very useful in its own right. You can either write it from the beginning using this kind of methodology, or you can use it to kind of, once you finish your book, you can look at it again and kind of edit your own work. So that's just what I wanted to talk about today, since Dan's not here. Dan's Kickstarter is super successful. So if you want to go check it out, you go to Kickstarter, and it's the Whales and the Krakens. We'll see you next week, and that'll probably be the last one for the month. But thanks for joining us.